Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Professor Dr. Thomas Schwartz from Vanderbilt University. Professor, going back to North Korea for a moment, what are the North Koreans thinking about all these changes going on at the top of our foreign policy leadership?
We have a hard time knowing whatever the North Koreans are thinking.
But they've said nothing.
They have said nothing, and they have not tested weapons, so they have behaved. There is a theory which I've actually heard from people that Kim Jong-un may have the same. There is an admiration for Trump as a sort of character that, particularly in China, among popular groups there, and that may carry over into Korea, that this is a strong man we can deal with. I can't say that we're certain of that. Certainly the North Korean propaganda has dismissed Trump earlier, but since this announcement of talks, they've been particularly quiet, and it does seem as though there is some progress being made. So
what do our allies think about it? They already have this situation where the president went into a meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau and admits he sort of made up some facts about trade. The president has been known to sort of make the facts fit for what he wants, even if those may not be the facts.
Right. No, and clearly there's a divide. It does seem as though the Asian allies are giving Trump a lot more of a leeway than European allies, where he remains distinctly unpopular, in which, especially of course to their publics as well. So I think this is one of those cases where we're going to have to judge by the particular case.
The conventional wisdom was that China would have to solve this problem. They would lean on North Korea hard enough, and North Korea would come into line. That has been spotty at best working this particular time around. In fact, South Korea seems to have moved things along further than the Chinese have. Now the U.S. and China seem to be getting into a trade war. The president this week put like $60 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese trade. They're going to reciprocate. What does this do to the overall Chinese-American relationship, and how it impacts South and North Korea as well?
Well, it is problematic putting these pieces together. On the other hand, I think the situation with China is one that has to be seen distinctly. There is actually a fair amount of support for taking a tougher stand, particularly toward Chinese thefts of American intellectual property, the desire of American firms to be treated the same way Chinese firms are treated in the United States, and there is a feeling that there has to be some pressure. Now, whether the best way to do it is through these tariffs, I don't know, but I think there is more support for a tougher policy on China. But the problem is, of course, how that fits to the North Korean situation, and in a way, are we going to see a situation where China relaxes its sanctions against North Korea, and so the North Koreans are emboldened when they come into talks? I don't know.
There's been a lot of talk with this tariff issue that's come up, and it's come up not just with China, it's come up with even some of our allies. Can anybody really win a trade war, and how do you know if you've won a trade war?
I think it's simplistic to talk about trade wars as if they could be won or lost. On the other hand, I think what you have to look at with this whole issue of trade is, of course, where the president's political base is. And he won the election in part because of a determination, as he put it, to stand up to China and Mexico. And in part, what he is doing is, of course, fulfilling that promise. And that's central to his political viability, is retaining that loyalty. And so I think hopefully these get diffused. I mean, trade wars in the end can be negotiated. You can make deals. There's a lot of pomp and there's a lot of theater about it, but then there can be negotiation. So I'm not completely pessimistic that this is going to escalate, but I do see why it's going to create economic worries.
Another major issue that the president ran on and it continues to talk about is the Iran nuclear deal that was negotiated by the Obama administration. He has continued to keep it along on a 6-month trial basis. I think he's done that twice, 3 times to this point. He's coming up to another decision time for that, I think around the 12th of May. Do you think this time the Iran deal is done?
I think so. Yeah, I think I would be very surprised if he gave it another extension. The only person who seems to be of substance within the administration who still supports it is Defense Secretary Mattis. Mattis may concede on it. The whole direction of the administration has gone toward a confrontation with Iran. the support for the Saudi Arabia. Last week, 60 Minutes did an interview with the Saudi Arabian prince.
We're going to have a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, it looks like.
Nuclear, but he also talked about seeing Iran as the equivalent of a Hitler-like aggressive state. And it's clear we have sided with the Saudis here, and we seem to be, at least on their within their view, we're taking a strong stand against the Iranians. And so I have a feeling that the end of the Iranian nuclear deal will be a part of this project.
But it's odd the Saudis are also involved in a war in Yemen, yes. and they're actually attacking some of the people that are our supporters in the Iraq area, because I think in Syria area, because some of those rebels are on our side, and yet the Saudis are using our own equipment to
Well, the
bomb
Saudis are less prominent there than the Turks, actually, in terms of going after our people in Syria. Where it's problematic is, of course, that the Saudis are causing a humanitarian crisis in Yemen that has led to many deaths, and there is really substantial concern among many observers that we have thrown ourselves in with the Saudis in what is a war that seems to be a very murky one.
The U.S. and the Mideast used to always want to be the fair negotiator.
Yes, the mediator.
The mediator of all this. Have we lost our ability to do that primarily because of what the Russians have done to come in and back the Syrians and be a power in that region where before they were not for many years?
I do think our position has changed. We have sort of forfeited in part, and this is something that comes out of the Iraq War. It comes out, I mean, both, this is something one could see both in the Obama and Trump administrations of retracting our power. What Trump has done is, of course, is thrown in much more directly toward the Saudi side, whereas the Obama administration was looking for an opening with Iran.
So the Iran nuclear deal goes away. What happens? Does Iran go back full force into getting together their own nuclear system? And then what do the Saudis do, and what do the Israelis do?
Well, this is one of the more interesting stories this week was the Israelis taking credit for the destruction of a nuclear reactor in Syria.
Which, some years ago.
Which was some years ago, but they publicly came out this week to say that they did it, which is obviously a clear warning to anybody who's moving ahead on nuclear weapons, and that would be a warning, of course, to Iran.
Dr. Thomas Schwartz of Vanderbilt University is our guest. We're talking foreign affairs issues facing the United States. I have to continue this conversation after this break.
Get relevant.